And, you know, I mean, what else can you say about Rapha? All-around great guy, an esports role model, and an amazing Quake player.
I mean, that's it. I mean, he really is the total Quake player. He's got the mental game down. He's got the mechanics down. You know, he obviously knows the maps. He's great at reading his opponents. I mean, that's one of his excellent strengths. And he's just a class act of a person. So, you know, he plays like a champion. He acts like a champion. What's not the like? Yeah.
Well, let's hear a little bit more from Rapha.
I try to be as adaptive as possible in Duel with my play styles. What sets me apart is being able to keep calm under pressure, playing very consistently, and I tend to be able to get in ahead of my opponent. Most of the time, I'll leave myself an escape. If I'm making it all in, it's pretty much a guaranteed kill for me. Otherwise, I'm not gonna do something super reckless. Big differences between Sacrifice and Duel is Sacrifice goes more off of team communication and execution. Duel is more of the thinking man's game. Fortunately for me, I happen to be pretty good at both. There's actually a pretty decent amount of duelers that are from Sacrifice as well. Dehang from my team is also in the Duel tournament. If Dehang or I have to end up playing each other, I mean, we've played each other plenty in the past, may the best man win.
Yeah, that's a matchup that they've seen a few times, those two teammates. But, you know, I think Rapha really represented exactly what we said about him.
Yeah, I like how he mentioned Duel is the thinking man's game.
It is.
It very much is. And I know it's easy to get caught up in the aesthetics of Quake and seeing the great shots and the skill aspect of it. But there is a very big, deep mental aspect of Duel.
Yeah.
Reading your opponents is huge, and I can't stress on it. Staying calm under pressure, like you said, playing consistent. These are many things that obviously he's mastered, and that's why he's won Quakecon as many times as he has.
When it comes to Rapha in particular, there really is not one part of a map that he doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
Like when you watch his streams, for example, and even when it sort of first reached a point where Quake Champions was able to be streamed, it was such a resource for just players that are looking to learn the game, because he'll stream himself playing the game and is just commenting on every single little thing
yes.
at all times.
And dictating, like, 8 or 9 moves ahead, which is like, hey, he's going to go here. I'm going to swing up around here. I'm going to grab this. And then when I come back through, I'm going to fire a rocket and kill him. And then that would happen. In fact, I'm glad you brought up his stream, because it's the first time that we've truly ever, you can break down, you can look from 2 views, you can watch it. But the way we typically watch Quake is a lot different than how it's presented on Rapha stream. It is quite amazing. Now, you also mentioned the thinking man's game.
Yes.
And if there's another thinker to put up against Rapha, it is his opponent. And I mentioned earlier that Cooler was absolutely the player that got me to realize just how deep that Cerebro game was. One of my favorite series of all time is a matchup between Cooler and CZM, where Cooler, just to get in his head right away, chose CZM's map pick, like going into it as a finals match. And we're just like mind blown. And there's only one player in the world that I think is the confidence and the balls to pull something like that off. And I think it's Cooler.
Yeah, credit to him. That's a great psychological play to pull on your opponent.
He won that map, by the way.
And what that does is that takes your opponent really out of his grooves, makes them start questioning themselves. As stated, this guy really is a legend. I'm a big fan. I've watched him, a lot over the years, and just to see him back along with all these other Quake greats is really exciting. It's really hard to say. I really don't know who's going to win this match.
I mean, you got to comment a little bit on Cooler, but what do you think about him just as a thinking player?
I think you can clearly see that in many ways he is just that step above most of his competition. And even early on, like just forefronting these strategies within Quake Champions itself. Because Cooler has been so successful in multiple Quakes, he has the ability to pick up a game quicker than most of the competition.
Right.
And with Quake Champions being a new game, he is going to be going into that with a clear advantage. He was forefronting Nyx in Duel day 1.
Yep. I think that's a great point. And, Cooler is, he has a lot of history. I feel like when I first casted him, he was a teenager, and now he is a man, married, with kids, the whole thing, and still right here as a Quake champion himself. So let's hear from Cooler and what he had to say about this Duel tournament.
I'm
and on coolers, and I'm playing for Navi. I'm from Russia, Moscow. I competed in Quake 3 very professionally. I've been playing for 20 years. I can know everyone, actually. It's a kind of adaptive style, adapting to different styles of champions, of your opponents. Quake Champions is taking a step to be more professional esport. You cannot be playing Quakecon if you don't have like perfect aim. I'm a pretty strong player. The game is pretty fast. This is like what I like. My group is like hardest one, waiting for my victory, of course.
That this is the hardest group. You know, certainly considering it's got the reigning QuakeCon champion, I'd have to kind of agree, along with Cooler himself. The other two guys, probably more scared, though, than these two, I think.
I would be a little worried being in the bracket with these two, let me just tell you. And I love the little bit of attitude, you know. By the way, I own everyone.
It's
you know, I really, of course, I love that stuff.
We talked about the skill, we talk about the cerebral game, but just as a personality, as a character, like Cooler has always been one of my favorites as well. I'm sure we'll have many more opportunities to tell some Cooler stories, but there's another like Cooler 04 story that again, it's just like, it just goes to show the personality is there. It's one of the things I love. I think that's why his fan base is incredibly large as well. Doesn't matter where you're from. There's Cooler fans all around the world. And obviously, Rapha's sitting in the same boat too. So these two certainly gearing up to give us an amazing matchup. And again, to imagine that this is just a group stage matchup. Well, let's hear from our casters. We've got Blue and Jahar about ready to bring us the action of this game. Gentlemen, what do you think about this matchup?
I mean, it's basically Rapha has to face the final boss right from the start of the game, essentially. So he's jumping right into it, and he's going to have to leap right into the action, basically.
Final boss versus final boss for sure. I mean, it's been a little while since we've gotten to see Rapha and Cooler here at QuakeCon. We've seen them in several other tournaments, and we actually have the potential to see them twice here. So I think we're making it for lost time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cooler has the great opportunity to put Rapha down in the group right from the very start of this one. Obviously, these two facing off right at the start. Rapha coming in as the Des mentioned, two-time champion of QuakeCon. The possibility to pull off a hat trick right here. With the way these groups panned out, that might be a little bit harder than initially expected for him. So he's going to have to be prepared for this matchup for sure.
It's a tough one, but as you can see, both of these guys are absolutely stone cold. They both got the eye of the tiger. They're not letting anything get to them. And if they have any nerves, well, actually, I don't believe they do. Usually, I would be able to say that something like this is a front, but I've seen them for years and years, and they don't break a sweat, ever.
The other important note here, too, which I was actually talking to some people about last night as well, is that Cooler is one of the players that has not had to split his time between the two different tournaments since he's coming into this one just as a dual player. He's not coming into this one as Sacrifice. Rapha has had to split his time a little bit amongst his team, so that's also going to be an issue that Rapha is going to have to deal with, is the fact that he's been practicing for both dual and Sacrifice tournaments, and that obviously has taken away some of the time that he's had to practice for dual, and specifically now to practice to go up against a player like Cooler.
Alternate facts, I mean, it could be that he's just warmed up and ready to go.
All right, well, it does look like we're going to be getting started with this match. And just a little bit before we do that, we are going to send it back over to the desk for now.
Thank you, gentlemen. And, you know, it's a good point, Blue. I think it's a great point that, you know, Rapha has been focusing on, they qualified for the Sacrifice tournament, been, you know, practicing on that. Granted, like Sacrifice practice is still some Quake Champions practice, but we all know that Duel is a totally different beast. Whereas, like Cooler, on the other hand, I don't think that necessarily gives one advantage. It just means that probably Cooler's been a little bit more focused just on the dual side of things. And he mentioned the land too, Ketchup. So, you know, a little bit right there. I personally don't think that is going to have a major effect on Rapha, right? Like, we can't forget how much legacy and how many championship belts he carries along with him. So I'm sure just that weight alone is a little extra training, Vic.
Yeah, and I could speak as a former duelist. Duel was not the only mode I played. I practiced in many modes, whether it be Rocket Arena, Team DM, what have you. Duel was obviously my go-to. That's what I went to, but I played everything from CTF. You can take all these skill sets from all the various maps and versions of Quake, and you just kind of incorporate it into your Duel. So no, I don't think that'll affect him at all. I think he's ready to go. And, you know, we're going to see this. The best player is going to win.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, Cooler did actually play a little bit of sacrifice in the qualifications. There was a team, I believe it was called Game.ru, and it was a majority was a Russian team. I believe Evil played on that team in week number 1, and then in week number 2, he was replaced by Cooler. They didn't do so well, but really it kind of did seem like a team that they were entering sacrifice, but it definitely wasn't their main focus. And even when you watched Cooler play in sacrifice, he played really well, but realistically, you could just tell that it was a game mode he was entering because it was there, and he may as well. But really, Duel has always been his absolute
It's
main
where
focus.
his heart is, right? And honestly, I think both of these players, you talk to Rapha too, and he will tell you, in fact, he'll, you know, book a few hours out of your schedule because he can go really deep on why he loves that game type and why, you know, and I mean, a lot of it is, I agree with all of it. There's something about the 1 versus 1 that it is you, it is your mistakes, it is the advantages that you take, etc. And I think both those players really have a deep love of that in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a deep love of it.
You kind of do.
That ladder,
You kind of do.
You take your lumps along the way. If anybody out there is newer and never really given Quake Duel a shot, let me tell you, it is rough climbing that ladder. So all these guys, even though you see them as world champions, you can ask any one of them. They were getting their rears handed to them early on, and it took them, it was a process to get better, and they did. And it shows how talented and dedicated they are. And actually, I was kind of thinking about what you're talking about with Rapha's stream, commenting through his actions. It's so impressive because he's playing the game, so you're supposed to be concentrating.
Super focused.
And he's still able to explain it to his viewers, which shows how much of a handle he has on the mental aspect. That it's really impressive. It is.
And really, if you've never tuned in, it is literally like if we were just to be able to, like, we've mic'd Rapha's brain for this match, and you're going to get to just hear what his brain is saying, because it's kind of the same thing. And you know, like we talk about the skill level and the strategy, but like we should probably uncover that layer and let people know, you know, like, in addition to remembering where your opponent is in a 3D space, you are timing multiple items. You are trying to control various areas of the map. You are keeping tabs on how much armor and how much health you think your opponents have. And like, as you mentioned, that focus, you sort of need that focus in order to keep all of that stuff inside your head. So the ability to be able to do that is quite impressive, because there's a lot going on up there than you might even realize. It's not just, you know, aim and fire by any means. So we'll comment on that even further in just a moment. Let's take a look at this group, right? Cooler made the comment, hey, I'm in the hardest group. So let's just take a quick look at it again. We got A and B, but here's that hard group. Cooler, Rapha, MabLP, and WitchTL, which we have no results quite yet. And then you see the B as well. But this is undoubtedly one of the top matchups coming from all the groups.
I'm really excited to watch Vishal play, because he's been looking really strong throughout the entire World Championship. But to many of these players, although he has experience in Quake Champions has been his current breakout game. This is the game that he's been sort of seeing his most success in when it comes to Quake in general. He was one of the first players to rock Clutch alongside Agent as well, and he's been using it non-stop from start to finish and playing better as the weeks go by. So even though there are players here that everyone's going to be worried about Rapha, everyone's going to be worried about Cooler, obviously because it's round robin, you can't dodge any of these guys. You got to play them.
You can.
But Vishal, I think, not to be underestimated. Quite excited to see how he does, especially against the top talent like Cooler and Rapha.
Well, you make a good point, because they're kind of like landmines, right?
Yep.
Like the names that you see and you know, you've got to be worried about. The ones that you're like, hey, I might have heard about that, but I'm not too sure. Those are the ones that can probably come up and really surprise some folks. You can't forget that these folks have played many, many times before. You know, both of these players know the other player's style. There's nothing they're hiding here. There's nothing that they don't already know. I mean, and maybe we shift the conversation just a little bit before we get started to that character selection, right? Because I think that will be kind of crucial. And so one thing I do love about this dual format is that it allows players to have a bit of an extension of themselves as a player by the champions that they select.
Yeah, you can definitely, you know, favor a certain champion based on the play style you want. And you can definitely see certain champions can push certain advantages, as we saw in the Razy Toxic game. You know, Toxic had a very light lineup, And he was having a lot of problems with sore lag and the acid spit, especially because the spit's landing and you're already a light champion. It was causing him a lot of problems. So I would think if they met again, I would imagine you might want to, rethink that. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying about the champion selection is absolutely critical.
So, Ketchup, what do you think here? Any one champion we think we're going to see these players favored? Do you think, are there any that that they are favoring and seem to be exceptional?
So I feel like with Cooler in particular, to sort of go back to what I said earlier on, Nyx has been a champion he has seen great success with, and he was quite an innovator with that champion. The second duels were able to sort of be played. The second duel was released in Champions. He was straight in there, and it was Nyx 100% of the time. But it was the style of Nyx where everyone beforehand was just using Nyx's Ghost Walk to just survive a fight. Not many people were thinking to use it in a situation to secure a kill.
Right.
Either land damage and then use the Ghost Walk where they can't see you activate it and then just get a surprise attack. Or just initiate straight up with the Ghost Walk, knock them up with the rocket, get that combo onto either rail or something to guarantee it. It's something he did basically since Duel began in Champions. And really, I'm kind of expecting to see Nyx at least 1 point from him because it is a champion he's been seeing amazing success with since he started doing Duel here.
Excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I know we've waited for a little while, so wait no longer. We're going to shoot on over to Blue and Jahar here to kick us off with this amazing matchup here for the Quake World Championships brought to you by AMD. It's Rapha versus Cooler. Gentlemen.
All right, thank you very much. Jump into this very historic matchup. Jahar, are you ready to jump into this one?
I certainly hope I am. I mean, it's no big deal. It's just like the two best players in the world. No big deal.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the quintessential matchup here. We the Quakecon champion versus one of the best players in the game right now coming over from Europe. And this is, of course, the first time they get to meet on LAN. Ketchup had talked about on the desk there, too, that Cooler has already had some LAN experience prior to this, prior to the whole circuit even starting leading up to this one. There was that Russian LAN, which was really like the first, like Quake Champions LAN that actually happened there. And he was able to win that one and take it straight up. So he already has experience here. He already knows what it's like to play on LAN. Rapha may still be getting used to it a little bit. He's only had the regionals to get ready for this kind of play style.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things that's been true about the Quake Champions beta is that everybody has been so eager to play it at the highest level, to prove who's best, to see how these regions are shaking out, how these matches are shaking out. But it looks like we are getting right back into it here, starting on Blood Covenant.
And the initial spawns as well, we are going to see Cooler go right over to the Sore Lag. Meanwhile, over here for Rapha, he's going to start off with Slash to start things off. So Rapha obviously having a little bit more mobility. Cooler starting it off with a much tankier champion, so we can soak up damage a little bit more. Initial spawns allow Rapha to get the Mega Health too, while Cooler is going to be able to get the full armor pickup. So he has that extra armor advantage. Both these players are going to be skirmishing for it. You will note the armor's a bit split to start off here, so there actually is a possibility for one of these players to try and steal both those power-ups right from the start if they can time it properly.
Of course, one of the big things here on Blood Covenant is rail control. Now, both of them have made sure they've got a rail right away. So it's going to come down to a lot of items and a lot of trades. And now that we've got armor taken away here by Rapha, we might be looking for a trap here from Cooler. But Rapha, of course, being Slash, can get around the map incredibly quickly, but he's also taking care to be quiet. Nice rail there, popping that trail immediately to create a little bit of distance, coming back in for the rail. Not quite making that connection. We still have Cooler with a ton of health as that Sore Lag, but that fight will win Rapha that Mega potentially.
He basically knocked off all the extra armor that Cooler had. That was pretty much about it, though, as he's still at full health, full armor as well there. So Rapha's going to be able to get the health, and now he's going to try to swing over and fight him as he goes for the armor. He goes in, gets a free rail shut off. Nicely done. He picks up armor again, but Rapha's also going to take quite a bit of damage as he falls back too, loses all the extra health. He gets himself built back up pretty quickly. But unfortunately, doesn't get much done against Cooler there either.
It's a bit of a trade, but here comes the trap from Cooler as well. Rapha on the run, taking a little bit of that spit, laying down a trail for the defense. That's going to prevent Cooler from getting the return, but he was actually expecting. You go back to that thinking man's game. He was thinking, all right, he's going to come back into pillars, try to recover on armor and health, and that's where I'll rail him. And that's going to be one champ down on Rapha.
Yeah, nice done by Cooler. Locks out Rapha nice and early here, takes him down. And so he's going to send him over to his second champion now. He's going to be jumping over to the Ranger for this one. So pretty similar in the play style here, just a little bit less mobility on the active, but he does get that Dire Orb to be able to toss back out there, so he has that instant teleport too. Trades mobility for just mobility, going right back into it. And now the dive comes in from Cooler. He's going to try to take the fight right to Rapha at the start, but ends up down below at the bottom here. Doesn't have the greatest position to try and fight him. Rapha, though, you can tell he's a little bit scared to take this fight. Doesn't want to necessarily just dive right back in there, as he knows Cooler's got a pretty big health advantage right now, but Cooler wants to take the fight to him, and Rapha ports in now, but he takes massive amounts of damage. However, returns it pretty nicely on the LG. For now, though, Cooler is going to fall back and try to escape from this fight. He's pretty low, so he needs to recover.
And immediately Cooler going as quiet as possible as soon as he can. He took a ton of damage there. You're right, Rapha's Ranger incredibly strong. and Cooler's gonna be recovering on all the 25s he can. Of course, Sorlag has tons of natural health, but this armor is always a little bit dangerous. He's gonna be opening himself up to a bit of damage. Crossing through mid, he's gonna be opening himself up to a little bit more. The nice little bit of rocket spam. In fact, the 44 damage rocket goes a long way against Rapha's Ranger. It's gonna be traded off armor and Mega, but it's 8 seconds till the armor comes back up, and Cooler might just have to watch it go away as Rapha doesn't quite know he's there. He's able to get one rail in and be able to back off. So that is an exchange that, for the most part, Cooler's won.
Rapha, though, is going to be able to get control over both power-ups temporarily, so he gets that one, but again, another rail just being tagged out for free from Cooler here. But waits on the edge of the portal, tries to time the rocket pretty perfectly, still ends up eating it, though, when it goes through the portal there. So now brought down pretty low, hit by a rail. If he gets by another one, he's a dead man here. He's trying to return some of that damage, but unsuccessful so far. He's going to be very careful staying in this fight. It's amazing that he stayed in that fight as long as he did, and now Rapha's going to push the advantage here, try to trade back that first kill. He's got him so low. Oh, but Cooler jumps up the jump pad, tries to go for a last man's gambit, but doesn't happen. So we see that trade, and it gets brought down to a 2v2.
When you know that your opponent is down to just a bullet from the machine gun, especially with that Mega coming up, yeah, it's very hard to walk away from that. And Cooler, I mean, he was still going very plus forward even when he had to come back up the jump pad, but he ended up paying for it a little bit here, making it 2-on-2. It's gonna be Cooler back on a Nyx now, giving that control back over to Rapha. He's got Mega, he's got armor, and now that he's got a bit of momentum, he certainly wants to push that forward and force Nyx to use that Ghost Walk defensively.
Yeah, already down to pretty much just 1 bar of health there. Was able to recover pretty quickly, though, because the Nyx has a pretty low health pool to start off with anyway, so it doesn't take much to get that back. But Rapha moving back in, it may end up coming down to this next kill, as we're 1 minute away from the overtime timer at 5 minutes there. So if it goes to 5 minutes, next kill will win. Unless someone gets a kill right now, then they'll just win on the timer itself. And the fight will begin on LG. Rapha tries to go for a quick switch over to the rail, but doesn't connect, so ends up losing a large portion of that fight. Cooler has the Mega health now. He's got a slight advantage over Rapha here, but he also has to figure out where Rapha's headed to be able to lock him down. And right now, he's just navigating over to the other side of the map, where he's going to be able to get that Mega armor for free, too.
Yeah, I mean, missing 2 rails there doesn't really allow Rapha to shut off that armor from Cooler, so it's going to be a bit of a trade. It's going to be popping back to the teleporter, looking for him on the bridge. He's not going to be there. In fact, armor was just taken away. I'm not sure Rapha was able to hear it, but moving back through rail. Looks like Rapha's not going to be able to get an opportunity to do much damage to Cooler. Is he actually going to come into the jump pad? No, he's looking for the rail on pillars instead as Mega comes back up. There it is. And there's the LG. It's taken away the Mega, though, so it's going to be pretty even on the damage. And here we go into overtime, leaving both of these guys at just about 75 health.
Rapha's trying to get away from this fight, though. He got brought down pretty low there and didn't return the damage because Cooler picked up that Mega health once again. The orb goes in. That causes Cooler to hold back for a second, but Rapha, once again, losing the picture of this one. He ends up falling back over here into the pillar room down below just to recover a little bit of his armor, being normal means. Didn't want to dive in for the Mega armor to be able to take a duel versus Cooler potentially, so dives in here. Oh, just gets wrecked by that rocket too. Down at 50 HP, rocket jumps up to the 2nd level, but that's actually a pretty good move because it dodges Cooler, it buys him a little bit more time to run away and at least attempt to recover some of this health because he's in a very rough spot right now.
And at that point, you're going to know that Cooler's going to be breathing down your neck in that Ghost Walk, and you want to be able to get away as quickly as possible and not have her come back in with a shotgun. And of course, we've got Rapha with only 75 health. He's railable, and there's the rail from Cooler right through the teleporter, and there's the first round going to Cooler.
Cooler, nicely done. Was waiting so long behind that portal as well for his opportunity to push through and finally get that last bullet. Times it perfectly, has Rapha right in the open, and is going to be able to take him down and win the first round here. All
right, so going into the next one here, look at both of these guys just completely stoic and ready for the next fight. We're going to be having Rapha spawning up top, and we have the first rail going over to Cooler. That's a little bit of damage taken from Rapha's Nyx. In fact, he can't take much more than that, making this Mega a little bit dangerous. But of course, Cooler, having that armor, has to focus on weapons right now in order to push that fight back onto Rapha's home territory.
Yeah, he do emergency pop the snow. Oh, the perfect read on the rocket as well. Direct hit on the airborne. 100 damage getting knocked off Cooler. You can see, though, how much Cooler was able to dominate the first couple seconds of this duel, though, as he ate that, but still has so much health built up over Rapha currently.
But he didn't know where Rapha was coming from. That might shake him up here for just a second. That might be all Rapha needs at this point. We have armor coming back up, and Rapha can actually afford to kind of dive in and risk this one, but Cooler's already gone away and acknowledged the Mega trade, but there's still an opportunity for Rapha to lay a trap here. He's going to be diving down to LG, looking for Cooler to move through that way, maybe coming back through Rocket Launcher, looking for a rail, and we see Cooler over at Mega hopping across pillars. If he's not careful on the sound here, could be a surprise from either one of them.
Rapha's trying to read into a dive down below. He's right about it currently. Times it sees the shadow. There we go. Massive damage being done. Cooler's not even reading into it right now. He's going to use the stealth to try and chase down his opponent. Lost him for a second there. Cooler's trying to dive away inside of the pillar room here to get away. Rapha actually doesn't have a lot of rockets left, but a few more, and he should be able to complete the kill. Was trying to trace into it, missed it. Out of rockets now, so he's got to go over to the rail and the LG in order to finish this one off. There's one more shot. One more will do the trick against Cooler. He's got to be careful pursuing this because he's also kind of low right now. He does have a little bit of armor to support his quest, but now picking the rockets back back up. He's going to go over here, intercept the full armor pickup, and Cooler hears all that happening from down below, so he's just going to head the other way, try to go over to the health, but oh, he has to go away again, as I think he did hear Rapha come back into this room.
I definitely respect Rapha going for the stack rather than the kill. I mean, all you've really done at that point is gotten Cooler down to pretty much a Nick stack, and at that point you need to make sure that he's not going to be getting that Mega, not going to be getting that armor, becoming an even bigger problem. But there's the drop onto the armor, but Cooler was kind of waiting for it. He was ready with his own rocket launcher, so he was able to extract from that fight, but there's the rail from Rapha, putting Cooler back up against the ropes once again. There's a little bit of spam coming from Rapha that's going to be giving away his position, but there's armor taken away, and it looks like Rapha might be on the hunt now.
Rapha's got that stack going, but Cooler's recovered quite a bit of his health too. He had a pretty good chain of health bubbles that he was able to pick back up there, so he's up pretty decent amount, essentially even to what Rapha currently has in the Nyx. But that's dangerous because Nyx also has a lot more mobility compared to the Sorlag there, so he's going to be able to hop around a lot easier, and of course the stealth is a very dangerous weapon he played against too. Rapha seems like he's kind of lost Cooler though, so he's got to be careful because Cooler is sneaking up behind him currently.
Yeah, to Cooler's credit, he's done two things over the past minute. He's evaded Rapha's fight, and he's also managed to take away so many 25s that he's once again surpassed Rapha's stack, and that leaves Rapha with very few options if he even takes one rail just like that. So with Mega coming back up, he's going to catch him on the jump pad. This is really dangerous for him, and here's a few defensive rockets from Rapha just to keep Cooler off his back and take away that Mega and get out of the fight. But it looks like he's actually taking this Nyx forward, catching him on the teleporter, and there's the LG. He's going to try to run away, but there's the rail. Nicely done.
That beautiful quick flick from the railgun as soon as he went through the portal too. Nicely followed up there by Rapha. Now we go into the next matchup here. It's going to be a mirror matchup actually, as Cooler goes over to his Nyx to try and fight against Rapha's own Nyx pick here. See if they can continue the fight. Well, Cooler is going to be down a champion. It took a long time to get that kill though, so Cooler's going to be a little bit careful about the timer. If he runs this out too long, Rapha may just win it out before this even ends up in overtime.
We've seen so many matches in the past where Rapha and Cooler just don't see each other and are trying to outpredict each other for several minutes, and now that they can both literally go invisible, I have no idea what to expect.
Well, Rapha's on the hunt right now. He wants to get that second kill. He knows Cooler went into this room somewhere, but it's a trap. He is going to have to pop the stealth in an emergency situation. Cooler's going to use this as an opportunity to move back in, pick up the armor, and Rapha, he'll bail out, but Cooler wants to keep the fight going. Rapha's one shot right now, down to 20 HP. He's going to be able to recover a little bit of it, along with getting the small armor there. Give him a bit more room to maneuver here.
This is going to get really intense when both players need the same 25, but it's not going to happen. Cooler just whipping around with that rocket launcher. Rapha thought he had the drop on him, but nope. The reaction from Cooler was just too strong. Now we're down to Slash now for Rapha, which is going to change things up quite a bit. He's going to be able to have a lot of mobility, and Cooler's just making sure that he's got control of this rail. And if he can deny that from Rapha for a bit of time, this is just a range game that he can play and control Rapha on.
This has played out so similarly to the last round too, with the trades happening, and both of them happen when we get pretty close to the 5-minute timer. So once again, this may end up going to overtime, and the next kill will end up winning it out, as both these guys have only been able to trade 1 for 1, and they're both end up getting stuck in the same spot of the map as last round too here. Cooler down below, just at the lower portion of the portal here. They are going to fight over the Mega Health pickup, but at the end of the day, Rapha gets it, runs away. Decent damage really done to both players, but Rapha with that Mega Health pickup, he's able to negate most of it and now run over and get the armor too, so he has a huge advantage over Cooler right now. Cooler's gonna have to try and hide.
Yeah, Cooler didn't really have enough stack to try to risk a peak rail on the armor. He just had to know that Rapha was heading over there, going for the grab, so he could keep timing. But now Cooler's going to be coming back, and it's going to be relatively safe, and he's at a point where he has to do quite a bit more damage to Rapha than the other way around, but you're absolutely right. I think we might be going into overtime. They're on opposite sides of the map. Mega's going to be coming back up, so Cooler might be laying a trap here at the 25 if Rapha's going to be coming through the bridge.
Cool's going to be a little bit careful, though, on the timing of the pop of the stealth, because Rapha also has his active up too now, so he could get trapped by that one. Tries to move in and take the fight, but again, too much pressure from Rapha. He's going to be able to go in, steal that armor pickup. Cooler trying to fight, trying to get these quick rail picks off onto him, but he's lost a lot of the prowess we were seeing back in the first one. The rails aren't hitting as well as they were before, so he's just not doing as much damage.
Yeah, there are so many times as Nyx where you just have to go for that one peak shot and then make sure you're back into safety. You cannot overcommit to any of these fights, especially against Slash. You can bring that fight to you so fast, just like we're seeing right now. Rapha going full plus forward, but here's the invisibility from Nyx. Can Rapha chase at this point? Now he's going to be happy to just take over pillars and meet him back over at armor potentially. But Cooler's figured that out. He knows that armor won't be safe. Has Rapha figured out that Cooler's going to be dodging it completely?
Yeah, Cooler wanted absolutely nothing to do with that fight there. Rapha came in way too quickly. And not only that too, but got a great initiation on the LG there. If they continue that fight, that probably would have been one that Cooler ended up losing. So now he's going to pop his stealth. He's going to try to follow through too. Quick 100 damage rock, but he's taking a lot of damage as well. Over to the LG to try to finish up the kill, and he gets it. So it's a second round now for Cooler as he starts it off 2-0.
That was incredibly risky. Of course, you can hear a Nyx even when she's invisible going through the teleporter, so you know she's there. But the timing was so precise that as soon as he came through the teleporter, bam, 100 damage rocket.
So Rapha now, here in the first map, going to be up against the ropes right from the start of this one, down 0-2. The Quakecon champion having to fight back now. He's going to pick that same original spawn over to the Knicks. Same for Cooler. No reason for him to change up his original spawn. He'll stick with the Sorlag and that very beefy health pool that you can see on the top right side.
And I love this trapping of the rail. They both want it, they both need it, but it's going to be an LG fight coming out of Cooler here. Going on the hunt a little bit, he's trying to force Rapha's Nyx into the Ghost Walk, but it's going to be another dimension altogether. He sends that Nyx.
Yeah, nicely done. Nice trap setup there. So, quick first kill coming out from Cooler. He's going to look for another one, too. Rapha just tries to dive right back into this fight. Was already brought down to 50 HP. Wanted to try and challenge for the full armor, I think, but only ended up losing himself in the process and out into the open as well. Rocket jumping his way to get a little bit more speed here. And we did see Rapha taking the port. So Cooler knows, generally speaking, where he's gone. Just can't chase the kill down at this point. That's still a little bit too risky, even considering the health advantage that Cooler has.
Of course, Rapha's going to have his eyes on a rail, and you can tell that Cooler, knowing that Rapha doesn't have it, is going to push his advantage and make that second frag happen so quickly. He is now one frag away from taking over Blood Covenant, and he's now waiting for that armor. He's still spamming off on the rail a bit. It's going to be Mega potentially going over to Rapha, but he's going to be making sure he's got a rocket launcher first. And as he's surely hearing Cooler cutting his way towards the pillars, he might be wanting to leave that up. But he's gone away with the Mega. We still have Cooler camping on top of the rail a little bit, and that also gives him a nice sight down to the armor. He hasn't revealed his position yet. He's going to make sure to grab it and go, and actually catching him on top of rocket launcher. You actually see Rapha kind of backing off from the fight, not overcommitting to it, and that was so close to a perfect trap.
He got Cooler to waste his spit at the very least, so now he doesn't have to worry about that if he wants to try and take this fight to close quarters here. Cooler, though, just trying to pick off rails from the backside, but he's taking a lot of damage in this fight. Rapha, thankfully for Cooler, ends up missing that jump there that he tried to go for at the last second, so Cooler's still going to remain in a safe position at the top ground, tries to go for the interception of the rocket over to a rail. He won't give away the Mega Health in the process, and again, takes a decent amount of damage. He's only at about half HP right now. He's going to fall back, recover some of it, and he's almost got that spit back up too, so that's going to be a pretty good defensive cooldown if he needs to use that, should Rapha get more aggressive here.
Yeah, even without a railgun, Rapha's done so much attrition damage to that Sorlag, so Cooler has had to back off a little bit. That might have allowed Rapha to go ahead and get himself a rail, which totally changes things up, but no, there's the trap once again, looking for the rocket damage. Doesn't quite get everything he wants, but we can hear that spit taking away, and he might not be able to get health quickly enough. No, he's just barely at death's doorstep, looking for that Mega. There's the pickup, keeping him alive, but as you can see, Cooler's Sorlag is doing just fine, but it's going to be LG on LG, and drops right into the rocket.
So many quick flicks coming out for both Cooler and Rapha throughout the course of that matchup, but ultimately it's Cooler that dominates the first map here and takes just dominant control with a 3-0 victory here on the first map on Blood Covenant.
3-0 on Blood Covenant now, I guess, but it's had so many names over the years. They've had so many matches over the years, so many different versions. I've seen it colored blue, I've seen it colored orange, I've seen it colored anything you want. But a 3-0 there is a very decisive way to open up this matchup.
And I love the change of pace that we saw from Cooler that kind of happened in the middle of the second round. Cooler realized, first round, Cooler was doing a great job with the rails. Throughout the course of the second round, I think I mentioned it at one point, the rails were kind of falling off for him. He wasn't hitting him as consistently as he was back in the first round. So he changed the pace up. He got way more aggressive, and that really came into fruition in the third round. That's when he really started pushing. He was able to trap Rapha. It was 2 times I think he managed to do it too, pushing him into a corner and then just completely destroying him with an LG spam.
There were so many times that Cooler was just setting up a trap on Railgun, and even if you don't get the frag out of that trap, you might still prevent Rapha from getting that rail, and that just changes the entire tone. If Rapha can't get that rail, that is just so many more things that Cooler can do that Rapha can't. Even so, we saw a lot of heavy play out of the heavy machine gun, but there's still a point where if you're out armor and you're taking that 80, 90 damage, you just can't compete.
So again, guys, these are going to be playing the best of 3 series, so more maps are still to come here in just a couple of moments as the players get themselves through the picks on our second map and get themselves ready to go. We should be jumping back into the action here relatively soon.
So if we do see something like Corrupted Keep, of course, that would take the rail out of the game.
Looks like Ruins.
Actually, it's going to be Ruins and Sarnath, of course, a new map for Quake Champion. It's definitely a favorite of mine. Fantastic in duel, and as we've seen so far, it can finish very, very quickly. Well, we're going to have to see.
It's a very deceiving map in some ways, because it appears to be actually a pretty large map with a lot of ways for players to escape, but the portals actually take pretty long distances across the map, so there's ways to kind of cheat your way through the map pretty quickly if you utilize those portals properly.
Portals, jump pads, and long lines of sight. I mean, that is just a perfect combination for just absolutely punishing rail. And both of these guys, you know, they're very confident in their rail, and they're more than happy to prove it.
Absolutely. So it's time to jump back into it. Of course, as soon as the warm-up concludes, we're not live just yet. Trying to see if we saw any major change-ups to the champion picks here for the second map. Looks like at the very least, Cooler has gone over to the Galena now, so we are going to be seeing that come into the play too.
This is actually a map where, personally, I don't play Galena that much. There are a few opportunities, but the Galena totems are so useful. They can do damage, they can do healing, and at the very least, they can give you some information on where Rapha is. And as we've seen so far, that can sometimes be the most important thing.
I haven't seen it used too much on this map, at least from the North American side of things. The European meta may be a little bit different, but normally speaking, we generally tend to see it used up a little bit more on, I believe, Blood Run is the map where we see a lot of Galena play, because that map is very, very portal heavy. So there's a lot of ways to use those totems to completely trap an opponent. It looks like, folks, we are live, and right from the start of this one, Cooler, again, going to be jumping right over here onto the Sorlag and gets that Mega Health to start, too. So he's got a nice, beefy kit. He saw Rapha. You probably heard him go through that portal down below, too. It looked like he wanted to chase him at first, but called it off at the last second. He's still trying to get his kit going here. Only has rockets and LG so far.
We're still in a situation where Rapha will just have to do so much more damage to Cooler in order to force a fight, to force a frag. And Cooler, I mean, you can see he's not he's not being too loud. He's being very sneaky, very clever. And that's going to make things kind of awkward, as Rapha will want to use that speed of the Anarchy to kind of force the fight, to push things forward. But he's opening up with that first rail. It's going to be traded back against him. But as you can see, Rapha really cannot afford to stay in the fight anymore. So that Mecha will be going back over to Cooler. We have 10 seconds before the next armor, and Cooler might be looking for a little bit more damage before that comes back up.
Yeah, Cooler just trying to stay defensive right now. You could tell even at the start he really wanted to get his kit established with the core 3 weapons to be able to pick those up, and he got them pretty quickly. Now he has them. He has the Mega Health still under his control too. Doesn't have the greatest armor stack, but still, the health pool advantage that he has over Rapha should be enough to engage here. Just has to look for the right opportunity to do so, because he's playing very passive right now. It is very much going back to what we're seeing in the earlier portions of the last map too, where both these players very hesitant to engage in the early portion of the round.
Yeah, this is something where it'll be very difficult for Cooler to commit and chase. I mean, Anarchy is just so fast, but rails like this will certainly open the door for it, and will leave Rapha in a state where he can't really actually escape. He's going to be going back downstairs, maybe to teleporter, maybe actually to LG, but he's actually coming right into a perfectly placed, perfectly timed. Oh man, this guy's got his sixth sense.
Well, Rapha is going to be frustrated about that one too. Nothing he can do, just walks into the room and instantly gets completely destroyed by a single rocket. And now Cooler's going to try to pursue it even more. It's Sorlag v Sorlag, but Cooler has a huge advantage. Pushes in, gets a second kill now, and brings Rapha already down to his last champion in this round.
Nyx can end up being a pretty good counter, but Cooler just has so much momentum. But there's so much LG coming out of Rapha, but with 11 HP left, Cooler will be taking the first round.
He even had a pretty big whiff on his spit too there, and still managed to recover. It seemed like the spit was pretty far off, or he just didn't have the range to be able to hit Rapha's last champion there on the Nyx. So Rapha, again, going down at the beginning of a map, 0-1 to start off here on the Ruins.
Now those were, 3 fights where Rapha didn't really have to be in it, but now it's going to be Sorlag v Sorlag, and that is going to change the tone a little bit, make it maybe a little bit more straightforward for them.
Leading right in. Cooler is actually going to get engaged upon earlier here. Rapha will start off with a Sorlag spawn this time instead of going over to his Anarchy. Cooler actually in a bit of a rough spot. The spit, though, is going to turn it back around, and once again, Cooler recovers with 10 HP, survives the fight, and is able to get that first kill against Rapha.
There is a very small window of opportunity here for Rapha to just grab a gun, even the machine gun, and do some real damage there. But that window's going to be closing very, very quickly as Mega comes up. Even now, Cooler is just waiting just a few seconds, not so much for the timing, but hoping to catch Rapha there and maybe get a free frag out of it. But now it's going to be armor for Rapha, Mega for Cooler, and more importantly, it's going to be weapons in Cooler's hands as well. So again, that window is completely closed down, and now Rapha's got a ton of work to do.
So at the moment, Cooler with the advantage again. He's got Rapha on the run. Rapha is getting a little bit more aggressive now. He's wanting to chase down this kill. When Cooler knows this, though, he goes quiet. He's going to hide in this cubby, too. We'll see if Rapha expects this. If he goes down the steps, doesn't check it at all, so he's got the surprise advantage. The pop of the stealth, and now Cooler can go in, steal the armor away, chasing Rapha down, too. The spit, and there you go. It's another kill from Cooler.
There are so many times where you pop that Ghost Walk and you don't know if the direction you're running is the right one or if your opponent's going to be right behind you. And even as a Sorlag, not the fastest, but as you can see, the aggression worked out. Here comes LG from Cooler once again. Anarchy's going to be on the run. Rapha is completely railable at this point. Definitely at death's doorstep. Has to be incredibly careful. And we see Cooler actually upping the aggression, upping the speed a little bit more as he knows that he has the advantage, he has the stack, he has health to burn, and he's looking to burn Rapha with it.
Rapha does not want to chase this right now. Cooler just got the Mega Armor pickup back up, so he's all the way up to full armor. Rapha already uses injection too, for those that didn't notice that. Right is basically like three seconds after he spawned. He already had to use his injection, so he's down. He'll have it back up in a second here, but still, it's not a good sign that he has to pop that very early on. Rapha maybe going to kind of a desperate place here.
really good audio cues out of Cooler, just hearing that teleporter and already getting ready with both the rocket, but still control over Mega. He's just making sure that he's using Soarlag to every advantage that he has, making this a very difficult uphill climb for Rapha. But where's the trap from Rapha? Really good initial rocket, but he's actually diving back into it. He thinks he can get out of this fight with the armor and his life intact, and he just barely makes it out. I was thinking that acid might have done the trick.
It was almost a fight that Rapha could win there too, especially right at the start of the fight. So we'll see if this gets fixed in a second, guys.
And here we get a nice little frame, a nice little look at the current situation of things. But that's going to be Cooler recovering on the 25s. It's going to be down here in the pit, again, leaving Rapha with nowhere to run. Cooler, though, is just going to be an LG magnet.
So finally, Rapha is able to turn it around a little bit. It took him a while, and he was kind of getting pushed to a desperate point. We saw him getting really aggressive, especially on his second champion there. Made a lot of mistakes, got way too close to Cooler before he was ready to actually fight him. This time, weighs it out much better, gets the engagement going, and now he's going to look to continue it here and try and see if he can get this second kill back. Remember, only 3 minutes into this round, so he's got plenty of time to reverse it and try to bring it down to a 1v1. Kind of on the run right now. It looked like for a second Cooler wanted to chase that despite his low HP, but he does end up falling back, and it looks like he's been able to escape Rapha. But oh no, he does want to continue that fight. He's got to be very careful though. Dodges outside of the portal. Can Rapha spot him, or has he lost the trail?
I mean, the rocket goes wide, and Cooler immediately has to be on the run with 25 seconds left on his cooldown for the Ghost Walk. That means that Rapha can use the speed advantage to just circumvent the map and try to find him at some corner. But it also means that Rapha's going to be very loud, very noisy, and there's a hiding spot that's taken away by Rapha. And there's the frag from Rapha as well. Cooler taken down, and now it's going to be that Galena we were talking about earlier, which is a great way to stop Anarchy in his tracks. But there's the LG. It's going to be no stopping Rapha. Actually, it might slow him down just enough to allow Cooler to get out of that fight, but with only like 50 health left over, he's going to be working from scratch.
Rapha lost him again, and you could see the use of that totem right there from Cooler. That actually saved his life. If he didn't throw that down and get the healing effect from it, he probably would have died in that one, and Rapha would have been able to take this round. But Cooler maintains, stays alive, and lives to fight another day here. As we come down to the 1 minute mark, remember though, it is a 1v1, so the timer is going to be irrelevant at this point. Next kill will win it regardless.
The longer Cooler's able to stay alive here, the more these teleporters and these jump pads will just be a death trap for Rapha. So it's going to be closing off options for him, and Rapha wants to make sure that that doesn't happen right away. It's going to be rocket on rocket, but the one from Cooler is right on target.
So Cooler almost losing his composure there in the middle of that round. It was very close. A great turnaround from Rapha, but just not able to take the round at the very end of it. The Galena comes in clutch for Cooler. He's able to win out the second round, and now, same as the last map, he's up right from the start, 2-0.
Oh man, I mean, things are getting kind of tense here. I mean, I think I saw Rapha blink there. That usually means he's feeling the pressure here. But we see Cooler now taking rails immediately. Very nicely done. But Rapha's taking a bit of damage himself as well. We have that Mega taken away. No rail for Rapha just yet. He's finally got a rocket launcher coming back down. He can go to LG, he can go to rail, but of course those are both very dangerous if you don't know where your opponent is. And Rapha right now doesn't really have much of a clue. So much so that he ends up taking a free rail, but that nail gun damage is absolutely insane, giving Cooler second thought. Maybe I don't want to stick in this fight.
Yeah, that was some incredible nail gun usage there coming out from Rapha. You never see that accurate of a spray, but for some reason Rapha was able to make it work, and now he's chasing out the kill. The problem is that he chases it right into a corner where Cooler's waiting for him, and he's able to trap him, reversing that fight, and again taking down Rapha at the start.
When you're Soarlag, it's so tempting to use those rocket jumps to get some speed, but if you don't know where you're going, if you don't look both ways before you cross the street, you might get run over.
So Rapha going down to the Anarchy again. And Cooler, you're going to be able to hear him hopping around up on top there. Cooler has already shown himself to be a very quiet player in this series, though. So once again, doing the same, keeping himself out of the action. Not want to dive right into the fight. Oh, he's going to try to trap him. Does he hear him moving downstairs, though? I'm not sure if he realized he's sitting right next to right in the room, so the fight's going to begin as they sit next to each other. The spit comes back out. He's trying to chase the kill. It's very close. Cooler's not able to get enough damage done with that LG, though, so both players jump away from each other.
They both walk out of there with barely any health, but immediately we have the Mega taken away by Cooler, which gives a huge advantage to that Soarlag, but the Rocket even things back up very, very quickly here. That we have no items coming up for a little while. They're both going to be kind of in poverty mode, looking for those 225s, but we've actually got Cooler taking a bit more health, and he doesn't have a rocket launcher at this point, which makes things a little bit awkward, but as you've seen so far, his LG certainly is on point. Rapha managed to take away the armor, but how far is that going to get him? Popping back through the teleporter, they might meet up here at the T. It's going to be solid rockets coming out of Cooler, but he needs one more to make it happen, and there it is.
Cooler bringing it down to look at that. 1 HP is where he is able to get that kill. Recovering a little bit more of it now as it gets the small bubbles, but he barely holds on. And it's unfortunate that the way Rapha timed that fight, he times it just as the Mega Health was about to spawn, but oh, okay. There's Rapha showing up out of nowhere with a rail to trade that kill back.
I mean, sometimes you just get so involved in the head game that you just know for sure that your opponent is going to come through that teleporter. But Rapha, just one step ahead and one rail ahead. That is going to be just still one more life here for Rapha to hold on to not only this map, but the series.
Cooler's lost the scent for a moment there. He has to retreat, get himself into a better position so he can establish himself a little bit more. He's neither the power-ups under his control right now. Rapha is on his last champion, mind you. Cooler still has 1 extra life to play off of there. Only Galena if he needs to switch over to that.
He's being a little bit loud, trying to figure out the jump off the eyeball. He definitely wants a rocket launcher. Can't blame him for that. But he has to, again, watch out for Rapha around some of these corners. I mean, 1 rail on an Nyx goes a very, very long way. Mega's coming back up. He might be giving it back over to Rapha. He's actually looking for a trap here on the armor. He's actually going to be coming through the teleporter behind him pretty soon. If Cooler's not careful, he's going to get a rail in the back. There it is.
That health back up, and yeah, there's the rail. Maybe thought he was going to push him from the other direction, but not the case. And now Cooler's one-shottable here. 45 HP remaining. Rapha, though, is not able to find him. He keeps jumping into the fight, trying to look for him inside of the courtyard there, but he was not able to pick him up. Now he's going to try to jump into this fight, attempt to take him down with the LG, but as you saw there before, Cooler was going for the cooldown pickups to be able to get that back, but oh, the lineup again! Shuts down Rapha, and there you go! It's a straight set from Cooler. 3-0 on both maps, and he takes the series 2-0.
I don't know what I was expecting, but I certainly wasn't expecting that.
Absolutely. It seemed like Cooler was on the run. Cooler was on the defensive there towards the very end of it, but he managed to turn it around in just a mere couple of seconds there. Beautifully done from Cooler at the very end of that last map.
Just waiting, just biding his time. And I mean, that's the case with both of these players. I think there are many players where they would play against and they wouldn't spend quite so much time just going silent, crouching, staying in a corner, waiting maybe 10 seconds before committing to a Mega. I think they just have so much experience and respect for each other that they know they can't afford to do anything else.
So with that, Cooler will take control of this series. He'll be able to get the points for the win here to start off the group. Then Rapha's going to have to fight with that 1 loss on his record. Hopefully he'll be able to make it back and push out of these groups. That'll do it for us for now, folks. So we are going to send it back over to the analyst desk to discuss this